Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Pitchwars video chat. I'm a little out of focus. I don't know what's going on. It's fine. You don't need to see me anyway. All right, so just a couple notes to introduce. I'm Sarah. I am on the Pitchwars board, and I'm the agent liaison this year, and I'll be hosting and moderating today's chat. Today, we have several adult mentors. They're going to answer your questions. If you are here, you stumbled across this video and you do not know what Pitchwars is, go to www.pitchwars.org to learn more about the event. But just a quick summary, it's an annual mentoring event where established writers and industry professionals choose one author to mentor by doing a full round of revisions, and then it ends in an agent showcase. And so it does not place take on it's going to be one of those nights. It does not take place on Twitter. That's a common misconception, but there is a big community surrounding Pitchwars on Twitter. We are allowed to answer genre and wishlist questions today. However, we will not be asking the mentors any pre-pitching questions. So that's like, would you be interested in my space unicorn drama or whatever? If you're watching on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else where this video has been embedded, you probably want to click on through to YouTube so you can participate in the chat and ask questions there. Our social media director, Limar, is on Twitter, and she will be trying to bring over some of the questions that are asked there, but she might miss them. And so if you can, and you can click on through to YouTube, it'll be better if you can just ask your question directly. You can go ahead and start asking questions now, and we will go in order and get them. And we have some other chats coming up, so you can find the video chats on my channel here. There's a playlist with all of them on there, including the past ones and the future ones. Or you can go to pitchwars.org, and it's a pinned post on our blog where you can see not only the video chats, but also the Twitter chats and also the Instagram takeovers, which is a new thing we're doing this year. And now we're going to start by letting our first batch of mentors introduce themselves. So first up, we have Ruby.
Hi, I'm Ruby Barrett. My pronouns are she, her. I am a 2018 Pitchwars mentee, and I am a first-time mentor this year, and I'm co-mentoring with my friend who I met through Pitchwars, Rosie Dan.
Hi, I'm Annette Christie. I am co-mentoring this year and every year with Sonia Hartle. I am the author and narrator of Love Lessons, which is available on Audible right now. And I am also the author of The Rehearsals, which will be coming out in spring 2021 through Little Brown. My pronouns are she, her, and I am represented by Jess Dallow of Brower Literary.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keena Roberts. My pronouns are she, her. I am in my second year of mentoring adult science fiction and fantasy. So I mentored last year and this year as well. My first book came out last year, and I am working on a second one with my agent at the moment. It's a fantasy, and I am thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Paris Wynters. My pronouns are she, her. I am the author of Hearts Unleashed, Issued, Matched, and I have an upcoming book in January, Love on the Winter Steeps. This is my third year mentoring adult, and I am represented by Tricia Skinner at the Fuse Literary Agency.
Awesome. Oh, thanks, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight and answering questions for folks. I forgot to mention, which I knew he would not let me forget because he's an active participant. Lodestar is going to be moderating the chat tonight, so he'll just be making sure there are no trolls interrupting our conversation. So thank you, Lodestar, for volunteering for that. And the first question is actually from him, too. It's pretty obvious what his mentees get out of Pitchwars, but what makes it fun and worth it for you? Shout out to the awesome community. Thanks.
I think that the thing is the community that makes it really worth it for me personally. The people that I met as a mentee are people I talk to every single day, which is like maybe weird. Like maybe we could not talk that often. But like, you know, thank God for the internet. But I wouldn't like, not only do I have critique partners who I trust to look at my book before I send it to my agent and or to my editor, but also just like friends that I can talk to about things that have nothing to do with writing. So it's just such a like giving, caring community.
Yeah, I'll second that. My closest writing friends are all mentors, previous mentees, and we talk every day too. But it is also really, really fun every year when Sonia and I get to look in our inbox and find the new submissions and get to squeal about stuff and get excited about stuff. I mean, it is a pleasure every single year.
I'll definitely agree with both. And it's always great to be able to help. You know, you can't help, or you try to help as many people as you can. But it's really cool when you are able to mentor and then you see like that aha moment, or you see the progress, and you know, it is just really refreshing and fun, and it means a lot too. So
yeah, what they all said.
Nice. I'm going to ask this question. I don't know what this genre is, though. Jesse asks, would you pitch auto fiction to agents interested in memoirs, commercial fiction? It doesn't seem to fit easily into a genre. What would be the ideal number of words? Does anyone know what auto fiction is?
Is it, I'm assuming it's sort of like
Biography, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like
fiction?
I don't have fiction based on on true events type of thing, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's tough to say without knowing a little bit more. Commercial fiction sounds similar to what autofiction likely is. A number of words is also hard to speak on without knowing genre, because memoir is going to not be longer than 100K, but commercial fiction could obviously be longer or shorter. So that's tough. I think when I ever get these questions on genre that seems a little squishy to me, I think my first question is, where would it go in a bookstore? And then, you know, even if there are many themes and it could fit into a lot of genres, if you go by, an autobiography turned into fiction, cool. So that would be fiction. So then I would think that what kind of fiction is that? And then where would that go in a bookstore? And then, and again, just picking the most predominant theme of your book, and then figuring out word count and comps and sort of where it fits in the genre based on that. But then memoir is very different than fiction. So I think that's sort of two different questions.
Cool. All right. I'm glad we now know what autofiction is. RT asks, what is the minimum word count for upmarket fiction? Is 70K too short?
I could answer that because I've just been through this. So when my upmarket women's fiction went out on submission, it was around 74. And my editors who purchased the book said, we really want to shoot for at the lowest between like 80 and 90K. But 90K is that real sweet spot. That's what they said anyway. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad you were here. Veronica says, I'm having a really hard time nailing the format of a query for very layered plot type fantasy. Any advice?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say for the query, focusing less on plot specifically and more on stakes and what's important for the characters. When we're reading when we as mentors are reading a query, and when agents are reading a query, they care about like what do the characters care about, and what's like the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. And so like that's really the plot point that you really need to tell us about.
Yeah, Ruby, that's a really good point. And thinking about it, if you really want to go to like high epic fantasy, the really complicated ones, if you think about what's happening in the world and the kind of good versus evil, like the predominant major things that are happening, like if you're thinking about Priory of the Orange Tree, for example, like warring nations, dragon that's evil wakes up, everyone has to figure out what to do with it. And that doesn't follow any specific character's plot journey, but it's a backdrop for all of them, and it allows you to see what's going on and what the stakes are for all of them, and then drill down a little bit more, if you can, on what that means for the individual protagonists.
All right, great. Laura Rosegold asks, what is one of your favorite books to come out of Pitch Wars? Are all the past mentees or mentors going to choose their own mentee?
Yes.
I'm going to choose my two friends' books, which I've very conveniently placed behind me. Meryl Wilsner's Something to Talk About and Rosie Dannon's The Roommate both came out this year in 2020, so everybody should buy those.
The first year I co-mentored with Sonia, we were able to mentor Throwaway Girls by Andrea Contos. And, as a mentor, you read the book at least 3 times. And so I've read it maybe 4 or 5 times in total. And every time I get chills and it makes me cry. And also our mentee after that, Oriane Desambre, wrote I Think I Love You. And it is the cutest rom-com. And it's just a feel-good book. So yes, I still very much love those 2 books.
Yeah. I got to read a couple of 19 class submissions that are in various stages of the publication journey. Right after the Pitch Wars was officially over, I emailed them and was like, sorry, not to be weird, but I've heard about your book for months and I really like to read it. Would you please send it to me? And I got a couple of really great books to read out of that are, on submission or being worked with an agent right now. But I'm going to go down with the ship of my 19 mentees book. It's still one of the very best books I've ever read and blew me away. And I don't really care what happens to it or what she decides to do with it, but it was just astoundingly good.
I have to say, I love reading, and I read so many books, and I read like every mentee's book that comes out, just to support and everything else. So definitely Meryl's book, and The Roommate's the most recent one I read, so on that one too. And it's great just to see as you start seeing like the mentees books pop up and it's like, oh, this is great. I remember this. I want to see what it turned into. So, because even like after we edit, it still goes through like so much editing. So it's awesome just to see like the final product and then the cover. So
Awesome. I recently listened to Baby Teeth, which was a Pitch Wars book a while back, which is not the usual kind of book that I read, but like I'd heard so many good things about it. I finally listened to it on the audiobook, and it is a very good book. It was really good. Still not something exactly like what I would usually read, but very, very good.
I've been wanting to read that one for so long, but I'm a huge chicken and I know it's scary. So
It's
I'm like
terrifying.
trying to build up my courage.
Yeah, I could not imagine being a mother and reading it.
Yeah, that's kind of my problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I think I've referenced it a couple of times too. So.
I see many word limits for manuscripts by genre, so I was wondering, would you rather work with a mentee whose manuscript has too few words for industry standard or too many?
I'm gonna
Go ahead, Ruby.
Sorry. I'm gonna say I personally would prefer too few words because I'm mentoring romance and women's fiction, and I think there's always room to add more kissing and feelings. So that's my take.
Yeah, for science fiction and fantasy, it's hard because I'm sorry, Annette. This is just
go ahead.
But I think that I would also go with less with sci-fi and fantasy, especially if you risk cutting out too much. You risk taking out a piece of the world building that's going to make the whole thing collapse, and that's really hard to do. But if it's too short, you can go back and add more, whether it's dialogue or conversation or some plot bunnies that are worth doing. But I think it really also depends on how much too long or too short. Last year, someone subbed me a 30,000 word high fantasy, and I was like, "This, I can't like add 100K to this." And someone also subbed something over 400,000 words, which is not like that's 4 books. So 10K to 15K on either side of what's the sweet spot is probably good, and you can work with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a lot of ways it's easier to add than take away. That said, when somebody comes in with a bloated book, it's harder to slash your own darlings, I think. And so the mentor can more easily come in and say, well, this actually isn't furthering the plot, and this is lovely, but I think we can take this out. And so it's easier to get those other eyes on there to be a little more objective.
I'll definitely agree with what all the other mentors said. And I think the other piece for me is it tends to be individual to the manuscript. So if I see something on the lighter side where I can see, definitely within a certain range, places to add, which I think which can be easier. And, like Keena said, you might not be pulling out plot points if you're cutting and, you still have your book together. But on the same end, on the higher end, like Annette mentioned, in a particular manuscript, you may see where to cut things and lower that word count because it's specific to that manuscript, where something else you might not see that. So I think there is an individual take with each manuscript, where we could see how to fix it and add those things in or cut those things out.
Nice. Okay, we have our first synopsis question. Everyone's favorite. So this is kind of a specific question, but I'm just going to actually ask y'all to kind of open it up and talk about synopses in general, what you hope to get out of them, and your tips for one. The question is, a hook is important for the query. Is it also important for the synopsis? But again, expand it to just talk about synopses in general.
I'd say yes. But more importantly for the synopsis, I think, is that you can show the pacing of your book. And if you're subbing to Pitchwars and you write a synopsis and you're like, oh no, maybe the pacing isn't that great, that's okay, because the whole point is that we're going to read that and be like, oh, hey, maybe the pacing isn't so great. We can help you with that. So that's my first sort of caveat is that's okay. But when we're, preparing a synopsis so that we can, send it to agents, or if, once you get a publishing deal and you just send a synopsis to your editor, the big thing for me that I always want to focus on is, am I able to sort of show through this, maybe between 1 and 4 page, document that my story is hitting all my beats and hitting them when I need them to.
Yeah, I think as far as hooks go, the hook in the synopsis should mirror the hook in the query. And when we look at the synopses after looking at the opening pages, we are partially looking to see if the book falls apart. But again, like Ruby said, if it does, that's okay. That's what we're here for. And Sonia and I also like to read through them and say, do we have an idea of how we specifically can help this book and what we can do to elevate it and help the writer out? So, synopses are a pain. It's okay. It's okay if yours feels boring or dry or not great. We're here for that too.
Yeah, I think for the synopsis, I'm also looking for the spoilers, like what happens in this book. Like query is what really picks me up, and I think, okay, well, I understand the stakes. Like this is why I should care to read more. For the synopsis, just tell me what happens in it. Like the pacing is key, like the others have said, but just tell me how it goes. Like, what's the climax? What are the 5 big beats of the story? And tell me how it ends. Then, I'll move on to the pages to see what the writing is like, but I want to know what happens.
I'll agree with everyone else. And one of the things I had found in, I think my first year of mentoring, with the synopsis, sometimes it's easy or I shouldn't say it's easy. I had found a manuscript that I was really interested in, and I noticed in reading the synopsis, I read the first chapter, but when I went back to the synopsis, the person had started pretty much in the wrong, they started too early. So they had the wrong starting part they started at the wrong place. So the synopsis actually helped me figure that out. And I actually had requested more based on the synopsis, because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I really like where the story is going. But when I had read the pages, although they were interesting, it hadn't grabbed me because it didn't mesh up with what they were saying the story was about. So when I had asked to see more, I was like, oh, okay, this is a good starting place. So
I've told this story a lot, but before we required synopsis with the initial submission package, I would always request them when requesting pages, because I once spent I read like 60 pages of a book. No, I think it was longer than that. It was more than halfway through the book, and the genre changed, and it was just like, it was literally like I had read two different novels. Like I'd read the first half of one novel and the second half of another novel. And so that is something that if I had requested the synopsis, I would have known going into it, right? And so really for me, that's the whole point of the synopsis and pitch wars, is just so we know where your story goes without having to read the entire manuscript. All right, Priya asks, do you have any advice for writing a query or synopsis for a dual point of view, non-linear novel? Should you focus on one POV character? Should the synopsis be written as the book, or simplified to a chronological order? I'm going to leave that question up so that y'all can, because there's a lot of parts to it.
I think I would say chronological order, because if I'm just learning who the characters are, then I kind of want to know what happens. And then I would go from there. But I think that often one of the common pitfalls with writing these things is that you know your characters and your story so well that you forget that we have no idea. And it's really hard to have a huge buy-in, even if it's POV, and especially non-linear. Like, I think I would go back to start simply and then moving on with complexity beyond that. But I don't know.
I would say that not necessarily focusing on one POV or one character, but let us know the stakes for both. And I do agree. I like the idea of chronological order in the query, but then at the end you can say this manuscript is told in a non-linear format, just so we understand.
Yeah. I would definitely say if you're doing dual POV, we want to see both, because if it's dual POV, then to me, you're telling me that we have two main characters and we have two storylines that need to be, started and ended. We need a nice ending, or maybe not nice ending. It's my romance brain, but we need an ending for both of them. So we would definitely need to see both of those in there. But yes, I was a little thrown by nonlinear, but I defer to my other mentors' advice, because I think that's the best way to go.
I'll agree.
I would also suggest taking a look at books that are similar to it and seeing how their back cover copy is done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So like The Witcher obviously is multiple POV, multiple timeline. Furyborn by Claire Legrand is three different timelines with two different main characters. So check out how they've done it, and you may be able to pick up some tips from that. Laura Rose Gold asks, what is the one thing that potential mentees should know before they hit submit? Just from my perspective, I'm going to say like the rules. But other than that.
Okay, so my advice is probably actually not very helpful, but in my Pitch Wars friends community, I'm known as like the soft mom. So I'm going to just say what I think you should know before you hit submit, which is it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It doesn't matter if you get chosen or not. It doesn't matter if you do get chosen and you don't get an agent, or you get an agent and you don't sell your book. None of that matters. What matters is that you wrote a book and you're amazing. And I'm so proud of you.
We love the soft mom. We're gonna start calling you. Yeah, I would say, at least for me, all of publishing, the waiting is the hardest part. So before you hit submit, have a game plan in place. And part of that can be trying to connect with other potential mentees, or writing something new, or working on your craft, reading some craft books, working on outlines. You need to know how you're going to fill that waiting time, because it can be excruciating.
Yeah. One thing I'll add too is before you hit submit, I mean, always double check, make sure you're submitting to the right category. I know there's drop downs, and inevitably somebody always accidentally sends either a YA mentor, something that's MG, so just make sure you're in the right category. But ultimately, I would say make sure, friends, family, they know what you're submitting to, because some of that, especially during, the time, if holidays and things come up, and, even with remote learning, if you have kids at home, you just want to make sure everybody's on the same page and know, what you're doing and the plan that you have in place for yourself, just so you have that support. And if you are selected, that there is somebody there to help you out, whether it be cooking dinner, because that's going to be the time that you spend editing, because you also have a full-time job. So I would say just communicate and make sure that the people in your life know what you're doing and can support you.
All right. Yeah, we also get every year a couple dozen people who copied, like their synopsis twice instead of their first chapter or something like that. So you can make sure you double check before hitting that button. Alicia asks, I always like hearing about mentors' process for how they go through submissions. Could you talk about how you approach it or plan to approach it?
Yeah, so this is my 4th year co-mentoring with Sonia, and we like to kind of take turns and go through and dive into that inbox. We both read every single submission, and we send lots of texts and emails, what's getting us excited, what maybe isn't right for us. So we usually end up requesting probably between 5 and 10 fulls, because we only have so much time and we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. So we kind of whittle it down, but we do have a spreadsheet of the yeses, the not right for us, and the maybes. And we go through it and we squeal in each other's mentions. So
yeah, that's basically, this is my 2nd year mentoring, but that's what I did. I very carefully read every single thing that was sent to me, especially because query, synopsis, and writing a book are all very different skill sets. And if you have, you're less good at querying or synopsis, like, that doesn't mean your book isn't fantastic. We all hate writing those things, so I get it. But I sort of triaged everything. Like, there were some books that I immediately rejected because it was an adult romance, or kind of got in there by mistake, or some that just weren't really the best fit. There were some that I thought were interesting and I wanted to read more, and some that I was really excited about. But again, request rate is very low because sci-fi fantasy books are very long, and I'm not going to offer to mentor someone if I haven't read their book thoroughly and carefully before I decide what I'm going to do. So it's a lot of reading. It's really fun, though. Honestly, I just am continually amazed at the stuff people can invent out of their heads. It's really fun. So I really enjoyed reading through submissions last year.
Oh yeah, I love reading what comes into the inbox, and I'll scroll through, especially I'd say for me, my process is if I see a category that I am not mentoring, I'll still read through it, because sometimes somebody hits the wrong key and I just want to make sure that, that's what it is, that they might have just hit something wrong. But then I actually go and I read the submissions. I do ask for partials, and sometimes I'll ask for a little bit more of a partial. So it just all depends on, what my interests are, what hits me, what grabs me. And I'll request all the way up until the end. And I'll go through and I actually reread some things because I'm always afraid that sometimes I have major FOMO. Did I miss something? Did I miss something? Did I overlook something?
And Paris, that's a really key point, is that when the submissions are done, there's no rhyme or reason for how I'm skipping through the inbox. So if it's near the end and you still haven't heard, that doesn't mean anything. It just means I'm still reading. So that's really important too. And worrying about tea leaves like that is just going to make you crazy. So don't worry about it. I mean, nothing's over until it's over. And it's a lot to read. So don't worry. It's okay.
For Rosie and I, what we generally plan to do is to sort of split the difference and make sure that we're flagging the things that we think that, the things that we love, and also the things that even if we might not love them, if we think the other person might love them, because if you love it, then I can probably get on board for that. And just in terms of how we go through it, I was a reader for Rosie and Meryl last year, because this is Rosie's second year mentoring, and Rosie mentored with Meryl last year. So I was a reader for them, and one of the things that I think is most important is looking for voice first. So generally, the first thing I do is go to the chapters and the actual pages and read those first, and then go back to the rest, because sort of everybody else has mentioned, the query and the synopsis are the things that nobody likes writing them, and I'm going to get a better sense of who the writer is and what their story's about on those pages.
All right. If y'all hear any children screaming, it is because my niece just got home. Everyone's fine. Okay. VV Graphics asked, for graphic novel writer artist submissions, both go hand in hand. One art form supports the other. Would this be a category open to pitchwars? Many of our mentors are open to graphic novels. And when you do the submission form, you're going to want to include, because we don't have a way for you to upload images on the submission form, you're just going to want to include a link to sample art. So that could be just a Google Drive link that only people with the link can see, that kind of thing. I don't think any of you are taking graphic novels, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay, just want to make sure. But yes, you're definitely welcome to submit, and we're open to graphic novels based on mentor interest. Okay. If you have POV preferences with type or number of viewpoints, would you still consider a book if the mentee is willing to make changes, or because it makes sense with the particular novel?
I've never, I know some people are very staunchly third person. Some people only want first. I've never cared. It's just always been about the voice to me. So if essentially you never have to worry about that with me.
Yeah, I don't have a preference. I mean, it's whatever suits your book the best.
Same. Yeah, agreed.
Same.
And it really does depend on the story. I have one book that's first person present, and I have another book that's dual POV, third person past. And really, it depends on the story. It depends on the style of writing and the genre and age category. So yeah, we're open.
And sometimes the publisher would even say which one they prefer. So sometimes you're first person, and they're like, "Oh, we love it, but you need to change it now." As far as number of POVs, it's just going through, and some may make sense, and some, it's a discussion if they get knocked out for whatever reason. But again, it's all manuscript dependent. So.
All right, great. Just a reminder that if you are watching embedded in Twitter, you're probably going to want to click through to YouTube to ask your questions in the YouTube chat. Lee is trying to pull questions over from Twitter, but she may miss them. So if you want to make sure your question gets put in, you're probably going to want to click through to YouTube if you can. Terry asks, have you ever set a book in a place you've never lived? How did or would you approach this?
Definitely make sure that you know somebody who's lived there and ask them to critique beta your book. You can do as much research as possible. You can look at pictures, you can look at flora, fauna, but there's certain qualities about, and not just a person who's visited, a person who's actually lived there, because there's a sense of something that visitors and the internet doesn't give you. You know, those little nuances. So, and there's enough people that you can find somebody and you can say, hey, you know, do you mind critiquing this or betaing this? And this is the particular aspect, you know, I'd love you to focus on. So that way, you know, and I've done that with certain things. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to read this and, you know, you want feedback on this and this, because some people, they might feel overwhelmed. But if you ask them, you know, if you could do it for this particular thing, you tend to get a lot more yeses because they know what the focus is.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Well said.
Annette, you're sitting in your closet?
I am. I'm also sitting on my son's monster chair. So it's like this tiny squishy chair and my legs are starting to fall asleep. And I'm like,
Oh no.
adjust myself. It's cool.
I just saw your tweet and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. What time is it? Okay, cool. If my manuscript straddles a line between two genres and I'm subbing to mentors who accept both, will it hurt my chances if I call it one and I'm wrong? So just for clarification purposes, I will say that when you fill out the form, you do have to submit, you do have to select one genre from the drop-down list. However, in the body of your query where you would normally put it, you can kind of like indicate, you know, if your genre is like a subgenre or something like that. Just a heads up. But yeah, go ahead and answer the question.
I mean, I'm not going to have anyone hurt chances for anything or penalize anybody for anything. I mean, that I think that, at least speaking for myself, I'm never going to operate that way. I mean, genres are flexible, and different elements creep in different ways depending on the book. So I'm never going to auto reject something if I say, oh, well, you know, it was 65% sci-fi and, you know, you said it was 40. Like this is not how it works. So I really wouldn't worry about it. Don't stress about it. Just pick what you think fits the best. And then, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, that's another thing mentors can help with. We can help, you know, focus the story and figure out what genre works best. But yeah, that's definitely not a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm. I think the only thing I would say about genre is that if you're calling it romance and it doesn't have a happy ending or a happy for now, then it's not a romance. So just to keep that in mind if that's ever a question.
Yeah, I have definitely seen mentors in the past saying, oh, I wouldn't have called this genre, but I like the book anyway. And they help you, like, you know, narrow that down too. So we have a question specifically for Annette. It's not about your closet. What has being an actor working in theater brought to your writing, or a writing partnership of stage manager and lighting designer?
I love that so much. I find there is so much overlap between the theater community and the writing community, and it makes me so happy. One of the things I found is really locking into a voice, and because I write different age categories too, a lot of work I did as an actor, it feels like it's working those same muscles. And so finding those voices, finding the quirks and the vocabulary and all of that, I feel it really works. But there's also that visual component to it as well. And stage managers are like the geniuses of the theater community, by the way. Like, they make everything run. They've got an organization that is unparalleled. But yeah, with all of that, I feel like there there is a lot of overlap of the artistry, the collaboration, especially if they're writing together. And a lot of those muscles are the same.
Great. All right. Rachel asks the question that a lot of people are asking themselves right now. For a contemporary novel that was started before COVID and can't feature COVID without big changes, people need to meet and do stuff. Would you set it in 2021 and hope for the best, or set in 2019? I've been calling mine alternate reality contemporary.
And you contemporary. So this is my take, and maybe this is going to go against like the rules of publishing. I don't know. So if it is, just take it with a grain of salt. But if I'm writing, for me, I'm writing fiction, and I'm also writing romance, which again, for me, is meant to be an escape. And I want to escape this year. So I don't want to include COVID in that. So yeah, I think that I would either just put it in 2019 myself, or I would write a 2020 without it. That's what I would do. And in terms of like how you're like, if you're worried about that in terms of submission, I don't think that, like for Pitch Wars, I don't think that that's needs to be a worry, because that's not really the thing that we're looking at as mentors. So we just want to know, like, we just want to help you with a good story, and what year it happens in is like almost inconsequential. So yeah.
All right, that was a great answer. I feel like most contemporaries, they're not set in a specific year anyway, unless it's around, a certain event or something, like the election.
Yeah.
And so even like the contemporaries that I've written, you wouldn't know what year it was when you were reading it. So it could be.
And what do they call those? Evergreen? Like they can go through time and you wouldn't know, but they're still always contemporary? Unless
they mention like dead technology or something.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that mentioned Google Glass. I was like, oh. All right. Jesse asked, how many applications does a mentor usually get? How difficult is to be selected as a mentee? Just from some pure number perspective, we got about 3,600 submissions last year. We had 110 slots. So it's just above 3% of people who applied were invited to become a mentee. And the math is weird. People always do the math because they don't realize that, the people submitting are submitting to 4 mentors each. So what you have to do is you have to take the number of people submitted times 4 and then divided by mentors. And you don't have to tell us how many submissions you've received in the past. If you want to, that's fine. But it does vary greatly depending on what genres the mentor is accepting.
Yeah, don't the science fiction and fantasy people get like the most?
Yeah, YA fantasy gets a lot too.
Yeah.
It's a lot, yeah. And they're long.
Yeah, I think it really depends on, I think for mentors that have more broad and vague wish lists, they are more likely to get more submissions, and the people who are really, really specific are going to get less, but there's a big range.
Mm-hmm. And it ranges from year to year too. So
yeah.
And I did mention on the last chat, like, even if you're thinking about, oh, this mentor got 300 submissions last year and this mentor got 100 submissions this year, the numbers don't really mean a whole bunch, because even I remember like there was a year that I got 60 submissions, and that was early on. That was the most submissions anyone got that year. Can you imagine? Anyway,
be nice.
And there was like 5 different books that I really wanted to mentor. And then, there are some years I got like 150 submissions, whereas like there's maybe 1 or 2 that I really wanted to mentor. So even the numbers don't mean a whole lot.
Yeah. And you don't ever really know. Sorry.
Yeah,
my first my first year, my one mentee was, I think he had a critique partner or two critique partners he met through some online critique group, but he was still so new to the writing world. So, you just never know what book you're going to fall in love with.
Yeah. Alicia said, as a reader, I just want to say that I would never be mad at any fiction that writes COVID right out of 2020.
Fair.
Yeah.
True. Hey, Tamara, I'm glad you could join us. It's like early in the morning. Tamara's in Australia. What's the one thing you're hoping for in your inbox? One thing. I know. Like a good book that you know how to mentor.
This is our first year. Our past 3 years we've mentored YA. And so Sonia and I feel like there are going to be men with chest hair and there can be steam. And, I mean, I don't know. We are going to be like kids in a candy store.
I'm this is like another like annoying non-answer, but I'm really hoping for just like when you get that feeling when you like finish a book and you're just like you're both like you're so happy and content, but you're also like just so mad because it's over.
Yes.
That's what I'm looking for. That's what I really hope lands in my inbox. So
yeah. Like I said in my wish list, I get very emotionally attached to books. Like I have to sort of walk around staring at the walls for a while after a really good book. And there are a lot of really good books out there. A lot of the submissions I got were incredibly well written and really good. But what made me pick my mentee's book was the fact that I just loved her characters and I couldn't stop reading. I realized I'd been sitting in the same position for like 6 hours and I should probably drink some water or something. But that kind of feeling that you were just mentioning is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's going to just take hold and not let go, because that's what I look for in books generally. So to get that as a book I get to work with for 3 months, I mean, that's the dream. Like I would read my mentee's book again tomorrow if she gave it to me, because it had just packed such a punch, and that's always what I'm looking for.
I'll definitely agree. Sarah, my mentee last year, I had asked her for a partial and I finished it. Like I flew through it and I sent her like a email right away. I'm like, can I get the full? And I'm like refreshing my inbox.
We all know that feeling.
It's 12 o'clock at night and I still don't have it. And then when she sent it, I'm just like, nobody talked to me. I'm like reading this. And I think I forgot when I got it, but I know that I was up till 3 o'clock in the morning finishing that like full. Like I would not go to bed. And I had to be up at 5:30 the next morning. But yeah, it's that feeling that you want to like read through, you like finish it. And I remember my first year, I kind of had the same thing. I wasn't feeling that great, so I was doing like the text to audio and switching it over. And I'm like walking and like listening to this, and I'm like, so you want that, you want to find like that story and there's always, I think for most of us, there's usually a couple that we get like that. And then we're like, oh no, do we pick now? Because you can't take them all, but it's always exciting. So I think it's not necessarily the one thing we're looking for, because it's always there. We're just more excited to read and see what's in our inbox. And I think some of us are always wondering like, oh, is nobody going to submit to us? So one thing we want to see in our inbox is stuff in our inbox.
Yeah, my favorite thing that happens is when Sonia and I are reading a submission simultaneously and we can't stop texting each other because we have all these ideas. It's like, no, this book isn't perfect, but oh my gosh, I love it so much. And I know where it needs to go. And you get so excited of the potential and the possibilities for it.
Yeah. All right. That's great. Marco asks, do you think the thriller action adventure market is saturated, or is it something agents are looking for? I'm not sure. Do we have anyone who's familiar with that market on the chat?
I think on the thriller side, it varies what they're looking for, whether it's, it might be oversaturated in, wives killing husbands. and they might be moving away from that, but then also you see things coming out, with that. So I think it's your spin on it. If you're emulating Gone Girl to a T, that might have been moved on. But if you're doing something where you add a fresh spin on it, that makes it different. That makes somebody go, "Ooh, I didn't see that coming." You can say like the Mandalorian, who saw Baby Yoda coming. And look at how that blew up. So, it's all depends on what you have in there.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say any genre is ever over, just because things continue to sell and there are always readers who want that specific type of book. And so I think if it's something special, you've still got a shot.
Mm-hmm. And even at that, you can have different publishers, like, oh, this one might be saturated in this, but this one didn't even, they're looking for that. So it's always, there's, like Annette said, nothing's ever gone, because somebody always may have something too much of one, but then the other one doesn't have it, so now they want it. So,
well, it's like you have to think about when we're saying a genre is saturated. The reason why a genre is saturated is because it sells well, right? So thriller books are still selling well, so more people are writing them because there's money in them, right? So just because something's competitive doesn't mean that you can't get published in it, right? Hi, Kellye. Kellye is in the wings, right, waiting for the next hour. Let's see. Okay, Liv asks, what level of help are you looking to provide? I'm assuming some mentors say a manuscript that requires a lot can't be taken due to time constraints, and if query ready, mentors will let them know. What is the middle of the road here?
I mean, if you fall in love with a manuscript, you fall in love with it. And we've had books that required very little. We've had books that have required a lot, and we loved working on each one of them.
I'll just use my own example. When I entered Pitchwars, my mentor, Helen, told me that I essentially need to rewrite my book. So I did that. So that was a lot of work, but it obviously needed quite a bit of help in certain ways, because we needed to, essentially what we needed to do was add a completely new POV. It went from being single to dual, which required a total rewrite. So like, sort of as Annette was saying, it was not about, that sort of sweet spot of being like a complete mess or, too perfect. It was just about the voice worked, and here's how it could get better.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, do you see a path forward for fixing whatever is wrong with this book? And if it's a lot, like last year, my mentee essentially rewrote 70% of her book because we needed to age it up. And we talked about it. And before, she became my mentee, we talked about what that would entail. And are you willing to do this? And I think it would really help. And she agreed. And that's what we went for. But I think it's more about, do you see what you could do to really turn this book up a notch? And if you can see it, then maybe it's a lot, maybe it's a little. But I think it's just knowing what that path forward is more than anything else.
And I think the biggest thing, like you mentioned, and even Ruby mentioned that she had, it's a conversation. So if there is 70% that you're going to have to rewrite or possibly rewrite, because it is your story and these are just our recommendations, it's a conversation. But I would say it has to be a conversation you have to be honest with yourself about. Can you do it? Because we don't know necessarily what you have going on in your life. So we'll address it. And it's a conversation to be had prior to selection, but it's honesty on both parts as well.
And that's really important, Paris, too, because I can make some suggestions, and I did this when I was reading the couple of fulls that I suggested. Before I selected my mentee and went forward with it, I said, here's what I'm asking. I would propose that if we ended up working together, I would request, in general, these couple of things. Is that something you'd be willing to do? Are these hard no's for you? If they're hard no's, then that's fine. It's your book. It's just my thoughts that this is what we could do. And if you say no, then that's totally fine. And if you say, yeah, I'm willing to take this on and I think I can do it in the time frame, then that's great. But it's always a dialogue. And if you say no, then you say no, and great, then that's fantastic. It's your story. But it's never something that I'm going to, demand. It's always a dialogue. It's always someone saying, here's what I think we could do. Do you want to do it? And, it's a yes or no question, and that's fine. That's just part of the conversation before we start doing it.
And I think it's also great practice too, because it's stuff that comes up in the regular publishing world, especially like the very first book that you sell. You almost feel like you have to say yes to whatever the editor says.
Yeah,
and that's not the case. You don't have to. But there's also sometimes you have to do 70 to 80% writing on a crazy, deadline that you're like, I think I just want to inject coffee into my vein.
Exactly. But I think that, that's at least for me, it's hugely important to get everyone on the same page and make everyone feel like they're equally invested in the process.
I think I'm really glad that you brought that up, because it is so important, because I feel like sometimes a mentor will ask a mentee, are you willing to do this? And they'll say yes, just because they're so excited and they want to get in. But if your vision doesn't align with your mentors, it's probably not going to be a great pitch wars experience for you. So you want to make sure that you're honest in that initial interview, because sometimes it's not a deal breaker, right? Sometimes you say, I want to do this, and the mentee says no, but I could see how doing this would fix the same problem. The whole thing is a conversation, so never think you can't say no to a mentor, of course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing is a
anything.
partnership. Yeah. We're picking you just as much as you're picking us. So
Yeah. All right, so we are pretty much out of time. So I'm going to have each of you just kind of, tell us if you have anything coming out you want us to let us know about, where we can find you online, that kind of thing. And we'll just go around the circle. Ruby.
Okay, so my debut is called Hot Copy. It's coming out from Carina Press in April 2021. It was my Pitch Wars book. And you can find me on Twitter down there at Ruby Barrett Write, or on Instagram at Ruby Barrett Writes. Slightly different.
My YA rom-com Love Lessons is available now on Audible, and my women's fiction novel, The Rehearsals, will be coming out this spring, and you can find me on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, or and if I'm there, you can remind me that I should be editing this very long book that I've written. But I have this year a short story coming out from Prismatica in next week, I believe, and then another one coming out in an anthology in the spring, and otherwise working hopefully soon with my agent on this fantasy novel that I've been working on. And my DMs are open. Ask me anything, anytime. And yeah, it's thanks for having us, Sarah.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming.
I'm Paris. As you can see, Paris Wynters. I kept everything the same. So whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you can find me there. In all honesty, probably better to hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. Facebook pages, the messages are kind of a pain. I have a couple of books that released this year. They're on my website. You could search it. And I have a sweet romance, which is different than what I normally write, that is coming out in January 2021, called Love on the Winter Steeps. And my DMs are open as well. So I've had a couple of people reach out, and I'll definitely answer.
Great. All right. Thank y'all for being here today. I have to point out, we currently have 69 people watching.
All right. This is adult.
All right. So I'm going to pull myself up full screen, and we'll bring on our next set of mentors in just a minute. So thank y'all for coming out tonight and answering people's questions. There was a question real quick, Amani. I said the rules that Pitch Wars hopefuls should know the rules before entering, not roles. Just because we get a lot of submissions every year that don't follow the rules. So All right. We're going to bring on our next set of mentors. And so when I pull y'all up on screen, if you could just kind of say your name, what you write, and your, Pitch Wars history. And I think that's it. Oh, and like if you're focusing on a certain genre or something, you may want to mention that. So we're gonna pull up Kellye first because she was the first here.
Hi, everyone. I am Kellye Garrett. I was a mentee in 2014. I got my agent through the showcase and I actually published my Pitch Wars novel, which is Hollywood Homicide. I've been volunteering with Pitch Wars in the mentor capacity since 2015. I have had 6 mentees. They all have agents, 5 have book deals, and I still talk to all of them, even though I put them through Revision Hell. And so, yeah, that's about it for me.
Awesome. All right, Gwynne.
Hey everyone, I'm Gwynne. I was a Pitch Wars mentee in 2016, and last year I mentored for the first time. I write romance and women's fiction, and looking forward to having a lot of wide-ranging submissions because my categories that I'm taking are pretty diverse.
All right, and Tricia, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Tricia Lynne. I was a mentee in 2016. Go Raptors. And my Pitch Wars book came out last year in 2019. It was called Moonlight and Whiskey, so product placement. And I have a new series starting with book 1 in December of this year. It's called Protective Instinct, The Unlovables Book 1. And everybody refers to them as the dog books. So the dog books.
All right. So just Rachel and Solomon was supposed to be here tonight and she had to step out. And Janet Walden-West is supposed to be here and she hasn't, I don't know if she's going to be here or not, is what I'm saying. I haven't been checking my messages, so if she messaged me, I'm not sure. But we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, we're just going down the line of questions. And they jumped a little bit, so I have to find my space again. All right. Oh, okay. From Hannah. Hannah asks, how have you seen the book market change or be affected by the current pandemic? No one wants to answer.
I think to me it's too soon to know. I write I didn't say this earlier, but I write thrillers and mysteries, crime fiction. I know a lot of people are trying to have discussions on what to do with the pandemic, especially when you're in the pandemic. Like right now I'm writing a book that I started last year and I don't want to really talk about the pandemic in it, so it's kind of like, what do you do? Do you set it in 2019? Do you try to act like you said it in the future? So I think that to me is what I think a lot of authors I talk to have been trying to figure out, like, especially now since we don't know what's going to happen. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the pandemic is just still too fresh. I mean, we're still living it. And I think somebody said this in the last hour, but I'm living it. I don't want to write it and I don't want to read it. Not at this point. It's too fresh for me. That doesn't mean that it's not right for somebody else.
And in terms of agents, reading their slush pile and querying and people being signed, that seems to be going on pretty much as normal. There was a halt to it at first where everybody was kind of getting used to their new normal and how to work it, but it seems to be going along pretty smoothly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I write in crime fiction, and I know a lot of people who've actually sold their books this summer. A lot of Black people have sold their books this summer for some good money, and I think that's a good thing, but it's kind of a bad thing because of George Floyd. So people are definitely buying books and they're spending money on books, and they might not be pandemic books, but the publishing industry is still chugging along.
And I have seen acquiring editors and some agents mentioned that they want COVID era stuff mentioned either this book takes place pre-COVID or it takes place in an alternate reality or an alternate world where that never happened. And I'm a really strong proponent personally of what Aristotle said about theater, which is that it's the willing suspension of disbelief. And it's fiction. I want to read fiction. If I wanted to read nonfiction, that's what I would do.
All right. Yeah, I'm writing a contemporary right now, but of course, if it gets published, it won't be published for like 3 years, right? So you have to think about that too. And I just put in a single line that says like the main character's parents' jobs changed after the pandemic. And my critique partners like laughed at it. I was like, that's literally the only thing I'm putting about it. That's it. That's the only concession I'll make. All right. So Janet has joined us. I'm going to bring Janet up on the screen. Janet, if you could just kind of give us a brief intro of like who you are and what you'll be mentoring and what your Pitchwars mentor or what Pitchwars history is.
Hi guys, I'm Janet Walden-West, and my debut, which is a contemporary romance, Salt plus Stilettos, just came out this year. This is my second year mentoring, and I am teaming with Anne Raven. And she could not be here because I don't even know what time it is in South Africa right now, but she's long in bed. And we're looking for contemporary romance, romantic suspense, and all types of contemporary and straight up fantasy.
All right, great. So we're gonna go on to the next question. Oh, the next question is a procedural question. So if it's just a procedural question, I just answer it real quick and then we move on. Is there any way to personalize queries, or do each of our 4 selected mentors get the same submission? They all get the same submission, and it does say in our FAQ to not personalize to the mentors. So one less thing to worry about. That's how I like to look at it. Lodestar asked, what inspired you to co-mentor or to choose solo mentoring this season for Pitchwars?
I think I'm the only co-mentor on here tonight. No, Kellye is too. Sorry, Kellye. But for us, Anne and I have, we met during Pitchwars in 2017 when we were both mentees, and we had started working as critique partners before Pitchwars ever began. And we kind of helped each other through the whole thing. And so when we decided to apply to mentor last year, we felt that between the two of us, we could address a lot of issues better since we worked together and had such a similar style. Plus, she is like the analytical side and has the spreadsheets and makes sure that I know what day it is and when everything is due.
I guess that I'm mentoring solo. And I think I forgot to say this earlier, but I'm taking several genres of romance and also women's fiction. And actually early on, I think Gwynne and I talked about it a little bit. Do we want to do this together? And I'm like, this is my first time out. I'd kind of like to see, can I do this by myself? So maybe I got it wrong. I don't know. But I hope not. I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, I mentored solo last year. I'm mentoring solo again this year. It's a lot of fun, and I get to decide what I want to work on and what I don't. And doesn't mean that I don't want to work with other mentors. I just think that that it's better for me if I'm a solo mentor.
So I've actually a mixed bag where I've mentored solo 2 years, and then I volunteered to co-mentor with people. So 1 year I actually co-mentored with my mentor from 2014, Sarah Henning, and then the past 3 years I have actually co-mentored with my mentee from 2017, Mia Manasala, another crime fiction author. And the reason why I chose to co-mentor with her was in 2018, I was volunteered to be the managing director. And I know I wouldn't have a lot of time to both spend time doing all the stuff I had to do behind the scenes, because there's so much work to do behind the scenes with Pitchwars, and also to give my mentee the amount of love and attention that I want to and I had in the past. And so when I knew Mia and I, we got along. We have similar taste in books. We tend to like lighter books that aren't super dark, but also still, crime fiction. And so it worked out well the first year. And then last year I was still volunteering. I was mentor liaison. And so we stuck together. And then this year I'm also mentor liaison again. And so it works out really well. It's nice to have a person to kind of bounce ideas off and to be like, oh, I really like this. What do you think? You know, and so it's cool, I think.
Yeah, I mentored solo except for 2 years with Lee, who was my mentee previously. And the first year was because she asked me, she's like, do you want to co-mentor? And I feel like that's part of it. Why I always solo mentored is because I just like felt bad asking anyone to volunteer. So I never asked anyone. But it was great. So there you go. Miguel asks, my characters speak in a Caribbean dialect. Is there a market for that in the US?
Yeah, I mean, have you read Marlon James, like Brief History of Seven Killings? That's a lot of that is in Caribbean dialect, so there's definitely a market for it.
All right. We talked in a previous chat about working dialect into dialogue, and so I can't remember which chat it was, but make sure you go back and watch those too, because there was a lot of good things said about it then. Ebony asks, a lot of women's fiction is comedic, rom-com-like. Would a darker women's fiction be a turnoff?
I think it would depend for me on the kind of darkness it involved. Like I know on my sub list, I said that I really, or my wish list, I said that I really don't want anything that involves sexual abuse for personal reasons. But that doesn't mean that I'm not open to other kinds of issues that women today are facing. So it depends. I like light and funny. I like dark and gritty sometimes too. So.
Yeah, I mean, if it suits the story that you're trying to tell, that's fine. If it doesn't, and if you're just making it, you know, like super dark, super emotional because you think that's what has to be in women's fiction, that's a different discussion that we could have afterwards. But yeah, I mean, if it suits the story and the story has the right emotional content, and that would be fine.
All right. Brett asks, would a novel with a middle grade age protagonist but YA adult content default into adult, contemporary with some graphic horror and supernatural elements? Now, of course, this question is going to be very hard to answer without having read the book. But any of your thoughts on, how to categorize content?
I think it depends on the subject matter. Like Jordan Harper has a book called She Rides Shotgun, which won the Edgar Award, I think in 2017, 2018. And the protagonist is a child, or one of the protagonists. And I think I'm going to totally mess up her name. I'm so sorry. Zoya Stage.
That's the second time that book has been brought up on this chat.
Yeah, because it was a Pitchwars novel, Baby Teeth. And it's about a child, but it's a darker book and it's an adult book because the themes are adult themes. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think that you could ever, like Sarah said, without reading, know whether automatically it would have to be aged up, but thematically that would tell you where your story really fits.
Yeah, I think it's about who your intended audience is too.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend I feel like this is always my recommendation, but it's like to see books that are similar to yours and see where they're put. But that's like my answer to like half of questions. It's like, look at other books and see what they do. All right. Lee had just brought us a question from Twitter. My love interest isn't introduced until chapter 3. Is that a deal breaker? Should I still submit it for Pitchwars?
I don't think it's I assume you're talking about romance, and I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it might be something that if it's not lending itself to the story, that it would be something that I would ask you to maybe rearrange a little bit to pick up the pacing. I know a lot of people, a lot of writers, they will refuse to let the hero and heroine meet anywhere except chapter 1. And I'm not that adamant about it. My debut, the hero and heroine met in chapter 2 because that's how it served the story. Chapter 3, I would think might be pushing it a little bit, but like I said, that's a read, and if it's, generally probably a pretty easy fix.
I think that maybe goes back to questions we had in a couple of the other Ask Mentor sections about beginnings, and I still stand by the fact that most of the time when you have a beginning, it's probably not going to be the one that you end up with once the book is finished. You probably are going to have to think about, did you start in the right place? And I don't think most of us really do. It's very common. And I know that we would not toss out a book because of that. We would just have a conversation about, this is our thought on pacing. This is our thought on what's expected in the genre, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, don't ever let that kind of question stop you from submitting.
As Pitchwars dad, Michael Mamey says, don't self-reject.
Yeah.
It's funny. So for us, the question is, when does a person die? When do you find the body?
It also depends on how long those chapters are, right? Because chapters are a nebulous thing. Lee just wanted to say she loved your sweatshirt, Kellye. All right. I have to scroll back up to find the question. That's the problem with this, with so many questions, is it takes a while to remember where we were. All right. Laura asks, what are your favorite kind of revisions to tackle, and how do you stay motivated through the revision process? I have Brenda in my DMs yelling at me. That's how I stay motivated in the revision process.
For me, I just start at page 1, and I read it and I go through it, just chapter by chapter. I don't do it by subplot or this or that. I just start from the beginning. That just works for me. And I'm working on a book right now that I got a bunch of notes on that I think I'm actually gonna have to switch it up, where I have these little Instagram breakdowns that happen every couple chapters, and I think I'm going to have to just write the book and then do the Instagram things different. So I think it's different each book, but figure out what works best for you. Just try it out, Yeah.
My mentor in 2017, Brighton Walsh, she had us do a scene map, basically, which kind of broke it down by chapter and then by scene. And that is a really great way to see big picture what you kind of need to start on first. And I have kept that format since then.
Yep, scene maps. Marianne made me do those when I was a mentee. I made you do them last year and make everyone do them all the time. It's great. It shows you stuff that you don't know about your own story, and that's fabulous. In terms of what keeps me motivated, it's seeing my mentees' excitement about what they're creating. That's all I need.
Anybody else?
Well, I'm the only one that didn't say anything.
Oh, go for it.
No, I'm good. I think everybody covered what I was going to say. So
yeah. All right. Tamara asks, what is your favorite book and why? Good vibes. You have to pick one.
I'm a mystery person, so I like series more than books. But in terms of, to me, the best ending ever, and I used to make all my mentees try to read this book when I chose it. It was Thieves for Burglar. It's the second book in the Sue Grafton Kinsey Milhone series, and it just sets up this final twist so well. And I think in mysteries, these ones I like, you have to have that good final twist. So I suggest you read that if you're a mystery writer. And I always say read as a as a writer, where you kind of look at each scene and break it down and be like, okay, how does this work? How does that work? What's the pacing? All that type of stuff.
I hate questions like this just because I never stick with a favorite one thing for any length of time, because it's like you're always finding like new and awesome stuff. But my favorite romance is actually a contemporary by Courtney Milan, and I think the title is Trade Me, but that was one of the first contemporaries that I picked up when I started reading again, and it just blew me away.
I think that it's like trying to pick a favorite child. And I don't have kids, but I'm assuming it's like trying to pick a favorite child. But because, yeah, it's like what I'm reading now, that's my favorite, you know, and then whatever I start tomorrow, that's my favorite. I think if I have to pick one, like out of the last 5 years as a romance, I would have to say The Kiss Quotient. And Helen.
Pitchwars novel.
Yes. Well, Helen and I and Gwynne were all in that 2016 class. And like I was DMing her behind the scenes and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to get a movie deal, you know, before it ever came out. And she's like, no, shut up. And yeah, I love that. I just love Helen's writing. It's just so her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Helen's books too. She's fabulous. But, you know, it's kind of funny. My favorite book of all time has nothing to do with what I'm requesting for Pitch Wars. It's Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. I've read that more times than anything else. It's just, and the why of it is because she's my favorite writer because I want to be her when I grow up. I want to be able to take those minute little details and stick them in there and make them so important that you forget about them until later on. And then the whole thing comes together beautifully in this explosion at the end. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. What if you're struggling to get the synopsis trying to fit to one page? Would it be fine if it went over 2 pages? And no, it should fit on one page in standard format. So that's 12-point font, 1-inch margin, single space for one page. And I do have a video on my channel that a lot of people have said help them kind of cut down their synopsis. So if you want to go find that, but also if any of our mentors have any tips for cutting down that synopsis a little bit to get to the 1-page mark.
So for mysteries, you should just have the mystery in there. You know, usually there is like a subplot in there, but you should just have the mystery, the main story. And you don't have to have every character, but obviously you should have the character who did it. And you, at the end, you need to reveal who the killer was. So.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, like, I'm going to go to TV as a coping mechanism for this. Like most shows have an A plot and a B plot. The A plot's the more overarching and expansive one, and the B plot's really fascinating, but it doesn't always contribute to the main plot. So your synopsis should stick to the A story and tell that all the way through. And if you find yourself going, well, that leaves out a lot of the nuances of the book, that's true, it does, but that's okay.
You cut down on characters, I would say. You don't need more than, especially if it's in particular romance, you don't need more than the hero and the heroine. All you need are your protagonists. You don't need all the side characters and little tangents like Gwynne was talking about, your subplots. So just, and then go through and be relentless about trimming the fat. You know, you need to pick out all of your filler words. Like mine, when I do one of these live kind of things, is always, get rid of it. You know, you need to get rid of that. If you are having a hard time picking out stuff like that where you can trim it down, I would say have, a writer friend read it and tell them what you think you can eliminate. But definitely, yeah, got to get that under that page.
And I think with romance, especially, there's so much tendency to want to include the outer plot arc, but one-page romance, you need to get your two love interests or more, however many you have in there, and show me their journey just in broad strokes.
Yeah. All right.
Can I just say one more thing about that? When you get to the point where you're querying, you're going to have to know how to do a one-page synopsis. So look on it as really good practice. We can help you refine it later on, but you got to make the attempt to do it that way.
Yeah. All right. Julia asks, tips on picking the right mentor to submit to. There are so many great choices. Thank you, Julia.
Okay, I'm going to go. You should pick me. No, I'm kidding. No, really, I think it's just as important for you to connect with your mentor on a communication level, and be that your mentor can be someone that you think that your idiosyncrasies, your flaws, your communication style, all that's going to line up for you. Because if it's not, and it's just this person has my book on their wish list, then it's not going to be nearly as fun as an experience for you as it could be. And pitch wars, I think it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work. Trust me on this, but it should be fun for you. You're learning. You're becoming a better writer. I am replenishing my own creativity. So yeah, I want to have fun doing this. But if you find yourself on the more serious side, I might not be the right mentor for you. If you're not dropping F-bombs, I'm probably not the right mentor for you, definitely. But yeah, you make sure that it's about more than just the book. Go, okay, I like this mentor's vibe as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good to stalk us on social media and see how goofy we really are. And it's something that we were talking about a few days ago, and I don't remember if it was on Ask Mentor chat or not, was look over the kind of books the people you're thinking about submitting to write. I mean, I'm not saying go buy our book, but at least, look at
read a blurb.
The blurb, at least look at maybe even some of the reviews on Goodreads that go into more detail. Because it kind of surprised me in the past how many people did not and just concentrated on what was on our wish list.
I think a mistake that a lot of people make is they try to think about numbers and odds, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to submit to this person because they're going to be way too popular. Like we've heard behind the scenes, people will ask a mentor, how many submissions did you have last year? And whatever they had last year is not going to affect what they have this year. One, it's just a different year. They could have different things on their wish list. Just a different group of people are applying. So don't try to play numbers and odds. Just really go for the person who the wish list connects to for you, and what they have on there matches what you think your book is. And like Tricia was saying, that it's someone that you think you could work with, because you're going to be spending 3 months with this person, and it's stressful. It's a lot of work. And you want to make sure that it's someone you can vibe with, because I don't think you or the mentor want to have a bad experience. So volunteering your time.
And, ask us questions. We all have ways that you can get in touch with us. So if you want to know what we're like, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, we actually, in the first hour of the show, I had a little rant where I said, don't pay attention to the numbers, which is ironic because I'm our numbers person. I'm probably the least likely person to say that, but I'm saying it. So, all right. Lee asked a similar question. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Would you share your top 3 or more published authors? So go for it. I had
Talk
to.
about putting us
I
on the spot,
I had to fill
man.
out one, for an application. I was like, "What are your top 5 books from the past 2 years?" And I'm like, "5?" My first list was like 23 books, and I had to narrow it down.
I think my problem is I'm in crime fiction, and I know a lot of amazing people, and a lot of the people that I know that I love also volunteer to mentor now. So I want to be like, name my favorite books, and they're like, oh, I should submit to them instead. But like Liz Little had a really great book this year, Pretty as a Picture. Rachel Hazel Hall has an amazing book coming out next week called Now She's Gone. Rob Hart had The Warehouse. Alex Segura just finished his Pete Fernandez series. So it's funny because I think a lot of I just read Tannen Jones' book. It was so good, The Better Sister. So unfortunately, a lot of like the favorite books I've read this year are fellow crime fiction writers who are mentors.
Kellye gets all her favorite authors.
I know, and I'm like, what? No one wants to submit to me. I wouldn't submit to myself. Like, really?
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
I think that's, and kind of when we're at this point too, a lot of our reading is other people's manuscripts that haven't been published yet, and Tricia has a really good one. Thank you, Janet.
This is now an ASMR channel. All right. No one's going to answer. No one else is going to answer. Top 3 favorite authors. Well, one of you said, or both of you said Helen Hong earlier. So there's,
I mean, I don't want to name, in my favorite authors, I always have this thing of like, I don't want to name people that I know, that I work with, that doesn't seem fair. So I would refer you back to our mentor profiles because we've all picked favorite books and authors there.
That's true.
And that'll keep me out of trouble. But I also read, like Janet was saying, I read probably 25 to 30 manuscripts a year, and I can't talk about any of those, and a lot of them are so fabulous. So,
yeah. All right. We have another tough one for y'all. I don't know why they're asking you all these tough questions. Who is your favorite literary character and why? While you're thinking about that, Tamara's cat also asked a question.
I think I have a lot of literary characters. I think books with crime fiction, with series, you kind of get to kind of follow these characters on their journey. One of my favorite is Blanche White by Barbara Neely, and she is like a bigger bone, deeper skinned Black woman who is a maid in rich people's houses. And she ends up using the fact that they basically see her as invisible because she's a Black woman who's a maid to kind of look into these murders and find out what happens, and you kind of really, the books were written in the 90s, but like she still deals with so many different issues that are still kind of really still important today, even like she dealt with like lead and water, and you think about like Flint, so that's a great character that I would love to kind of emulate and have a character as powerful and as memorable as Blanche White that Barbara Neely did.
Yeah, Kellye, I know I talked to you about this when I interviewed you for All the Kissing, but one of my all-time favorite characters is in your books. It's the voice. I love that character so much because there's not very much of her in there, but what's in there is like pure powerhouse. It's fabulous.
Can I explain who the voice is, since she just gave me a huge compliment? So my books are about a character who investigates stuff for reward money, and so she has to call the tip line, and she always talks to the person called the voice, who's like the rudest, most not caring about her job person possible, and it like gives her so much shit about calling, because she'll call like with every time she has an idea, like I think Gwynne did it, I think Tricia did it, I think Janet did it, I think Sarah did it, and she's like, you've literally accused everybody on the whole planet of killing this person. So that's my character, but thank you, Gwynne, so much.
I mean it.
I think my current favorite is from Haley Edwards' newest series. I think it's Potentate of Atlanta. And I can't remember the main character's name. I mean, I'm doing good to remember my kids' names most days. But her character is awesome because in the previous series, she really messed up. I mean, hurt people. She betrayed friends. And so now she has the chance for a clean start. But in order to do that, she's just not moving someplace else and taking a new name and starting over. She has to make amends with all of the people that she did hurt in her past. And the way that she faces it is really moving.
I've been sitting here going over and over this in my head, and I keep coming back to two. If you've read any J.R. Ward books, you've probably come across Lassiter in the Black Dagger Brotherhood, and he's just kind of this very outlandish angel that is hilarious, and so I get a really big kick out of Lassiter, and I would have to say the other one. I just blanked on it. Damn it. Okay. Sorry. Blanked on it. If I remember, you can come back to me.
Okay. I have about 10 minutes left in the Cemetery Boys audiobook. So that's like all I can think of right now is those characters. But I really liked in Kat Cho's series, in the first book, it's a side character. I can't remember his name right now, but he's a Dokebi, which is a mythological creature. And then he's actually one of the main characters in the second book. So I'm probably not the only one who liked him, I guess. Yeah. All right.
I just thought of it.
Oh, go for it.
I thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you read any Cressley Cole's Immortals After Dark, Nyx. Her name is Nyx, and she is also a very Lassiter-ish kind of character. So not that that's all I read is paranormal. It's not, I promise. It's just that it's cool, the kind of stuff they can do in those novels. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. On the wish list, I saw a few mentors mention authors from a diverse or underrepresented backgrounds. How should that be captured in a submission? I'll just answer that really quickly because I think it's pretty standard answers. If you feel comfortable, of course, you can mention that in the bio section. Usually it comes at the end of your query letter, where you just kind of talk about yourself. And then you can also, if you want to, and if you feel comfortable as well, when you're summarizing your novel, when you have like the genre and word count and stuff like that, you can say something like, this book is own voices for XYZ rep. And easy peasy. Oh, we have a lot of people laughing at sometimes like people just start talking and then it makes it hard for me to find questions. Okay. Is anyone interested in historical Edwardian spy stories? Again, we only have 4 mentors here today, so make sure you go check all the mentors. Maybe ask on the Ask a Mentor chat one day. Any of you interested in those? I don't think we have a lot of historical people here tonight. Yeah. But we do have them.
It sounds great, though.
I know.
I feel like
I was like,
discouraged.
historical Edwardian spy stories. I was like, I want to read that.
That sounds fabulous. Yeah. I mean, I have historical romance on my list, so I don't know if it has a romantic element or not, but sounds great.
Thriller craft question for Kelley. How much lead time do you prefer before the central crime in a typical novel? Also love the sweatshirt.
Thank you, Jessica. I feel like you should have the body pretty quickly. But I think by the end of chapter 3 is usually standard actually for that. I tend to kill my people either first book, it was before the book even started. And I think in the second book, it was like chapter 1, chapter 2, so you kind of do want to establish the person too. I think that's why like in a lot of PI novels, they always start with like the client coming into the office, and you kind of get a feel for like what the PI is like from how they interact with the client. So I personally like to jump in. You kind of want to establish if this is a mystery or also a thriller. Like with thrillers and domestic suspense, it's about kind of establishing that world. So before you introduce the mystery of that, like the missing child or the missing husband or the missing sister, whatever it may be. So.
All right. Malin asks, is there a benefit to picking a mentor who is close to your book's target audience? I don't know if that means like age or race or religion or anything like that, but
I think there probably is. I don't know if that's going to be a popular answer, but I know I feel like I got very lucky when my mentor chose me, because we're in a similar area inside the romance genre.
Who was your mentor?
Rebecca Yaros. And she has been, and she's still mentoring me even now. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so good to hook up with her, is because there are things about the publishing industry and publishing behind the scenes that it's really helped me. You know, she, as far as writing proposals for new stories and specifically who they're going to, and you know, going out on sub and discussing, you know, the kind of agents that's going to bring the right, you know, representation to the kind of books I want to sell. And I ended up with a great agent because of that. So it may not so much reflect it in the story itself, but definitely if your mentor goes above and beyond through Pitch Wars, it's definitely helped me.
I just, while you were talking, I had a thought. So picking a mentor is close to your book's target audience. Unless we're talking about middle grade or YA, which is the adult chat. So I'm just assuming this is adult. The mentors are your target audience, because if they've requested that genre, they are the audience for that genre. So, yeah. But when it comes to YA middle grade, I would say no, like, because then the question becomes like, should I choose a younger mentor? Like, not necessarily, you know. Do you guys deal with a husband and wife co-author team differently than with a single author when mentoring? Have any of you ever worked with a co-mentor team?
No,
we have had them in Pitch Wars, but
co-author
yeah,
team, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, co-author team.
I would think it would be the same. You're still going to give the same feedback and ask for the same amount of work. So,
yeah, I think the co-author team has to also, like, whenever we have co-mentors, they have to decide how they're going to work on the book, and their you know, who's going to handle what in their division of labor. And I think just the co-author team would also have to do that with themselves, you know. So it's just more people. That's the difference. Anne asks, how do you feel about controversial cliffhanger endings, even for standalone novels? Contemporary thriller with sequel potential barrier.
You have to finish the novel. Like, you can't. So for my book, my first book, I had a obviously the murder, and then I had a subplot with a relationship thing. And so what I did do is I made sure that I solved the murder, but I ended the book with on a cliffhanger of the romance. But when I did that, I already knew that I had a series, you know. And so even in my querying, it's a standalone with series potential, you know. So you don't want it to be that if you have the cliffhanger ending, and all of a sudden your agent is like, or your editor's like, I just want one book, that it's really hard for you to just take that ending off, you know? So it should not be your main story for a thriller or a mystery.
All right. Have any of you seen Warrior Nun? I know this is totally random. Did you see it, Janet?
Yes. I have not watched the last 2 episodes though.
Oh, okay.
But spoilers are okay. Spoilers are okay.
It's not a spoiler because it doesn't end. Like, like I literally wouldn't even end an episode that way. Like, I don't understand how the series ended that way. Anyway, That's besides the point. Focus, Sarah. All right. How do you deal with MacGuffins in a synopsis? And maybe one of you can explain to some of us that don't know what a MacGuffin is. Not that I don't.
What's a MacGuffin?
I've
Please tell
heard the
me.
term, but we could Google it right now if you'd like. Let me Google it for y'all.
Okay.
Hold on. MacGuffin. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Wikipedia. In fiction, a MacGuffin, sometimes a McGuffin, is an object, device, or event that is necessary to the plot and the motivation of the characters, but insignificant, unimportant, or irrelevant in itself.
Huh.
Take it away, guys.
Is it like the snowboard and Rosebud, like that? Maybe. I don't know. Don't ask me.
We're clearly not the audience. The audience was the question.
Laura, I might recommend you ask this on the next Ask Mentor chat.
Let's keep asking until someone has an answer.
Because they don't know. Okay. That's not a question. Sometimes I'm like looking for a question mark. Okay. As mentors, you only see the first chapter. So in a romance where love interest only appears in chapter 3, would you even consider a manuscript which you don't see the love interest in your pages? I think we pretty clearly answered that you would consider it, and that's also what the synopsis is for. Is they can take a look and see when the love interest appears, right?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely talk about that in your query in your synopsis.
All right. Tamara asks, can the hook in your query be something small that happens in your book?
Yeah, I mean, the hook is something that keeps you reading. So if it's, whatever detail it is, as long as it captures the reader's interest, then you've got a hook. It doesn't have to be the main plot because you're going to go on to describe part of that in the rest of your query anyway.
Yeah, I think we're always saying, showcase what makes your story different. So if that's what it is, sure.
I mean, sometimes what makes that story different is the voice. And if that's part of your voice and you're showcasing that voice, that might be one of the most important things I want to know.
I just laughed to myself because you said the voice right at the same time that I'm hitting the comments where everyone's talking about capital the voice in Kelly's books. Yeah, so a lot of people love the voice.
I feel so loved right now. Thank you.
Ebony, I think, won your audiobook on one of the episodes of Pub Talk Live, so she listened to it and my recommendation. So thanks, Ebony. Liv asks, what is your ideal problem you'd love to help with a mentee? So this question was asked in an earlier chat, and so people were kind of wondering, like, basically, what are your strengths? Like working on character, working on plot, working on motivation, stuff like that.
I love plots and I love a good twist. And I think that, to me, I'd like to think that I do good twists and I can hopefully help my mentee out, our mentee, I should say me and my mentee out with some good unexpected twists and red herrings. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, ours is big picture too. We love working on plot, and one of the reasons that Anne and I decided to co-mentor is we discovered that we do a really good job of bouncing ideas back and forth and working on plot holes for ourselves, and we've invited other critique partners in to do the same thing, and it really seems to work that way.
Yeah, my favorite thing to work on is characterization and dialogue. Because my pet peeve when I read a piece of fiction is stilted dialogue. if it doesn't need to be that way. And the two things go together really well. You can't have a well-rounded, realistic character without them sounding like themselves too. So those are my favorite things to work on.
I would have to say I love characterization. So particularly internal character arcs. Definitely ring my bell. I guess I'm good at, okay. I think probably the only thing I really truly suck at, and I'm going to be upfront about this, is line edits. So don't expect me to find all your typos. But other than that, if it's plot or characterization or overarching arcs or yeah, I'm into all of it. I just really hate line edits.
You're not alone. I worked with an author in my earlier publishing career, who she admitted like her grammar, her punctuation, she just couldn't grasp it, you know, but like her voice was just so amazing. It was so funny, and she wrote romance, and it was like just this great, funny, sexy romance. And no one who worked with her cared, right? Because like grammar is easy to fix, punctuation is easy to fix, you know? I mean, copy editors, like, I love copy editors. God forbid. I cannot remember the difference between lay and lie. Like, I can't. It's just impossible. So, like, that's what copy editors are for, and they're great for it. I love them.
I do want to say that you should definitely, though, make sure your book is as grammar,
yeah.
you know, typo free and, you know, on grammar. Don't think that like, oh, they'll love my voice, because I get distracted if there's a lot of typos in a work. So
if I can catch the typos in it, then there are too many. Just
well,
saying.
It's like anything. If you know something is your weakness, like get a critique partner who's good at it, you know?
Hey, like Gwynne is all the kissing blogs go directly to her. You know, she's our copy editor, man. She takes care of me.
I have a background as professional copy editor and proofreader, so that stuff is
copy editors are angels. Man.
Yeah, I can't read a book without noticing that stuff, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a sticking point for me, because I can fix it.
Tanisha asks, once you've selected your mentee, what's the first thing you do to get started? What's your process? Well, first you have to wait for us to announce it, but after that.
I can
have a party.
Congratulate them. The first thing we always have our mentees do is we ask you to basically break down your book. So to take every chapter, write down what happens in it. And then that way we can kind of look at it and see how the plot's going and your red herrings and where they are. And then I always send them basically a beat sheet breakdown from my favorite book, which is Writing the Mystery novel by Hallie Efron. And then that's what we're going to kind of use to re-break the story, because it breaks down how many chapters and beats you should have in each act and stuff like that. So the first thing you'll do is basically break down your book.
Yep, seen that.
That's kind of our process as well. We will have already, I'll cheat and tell you this, have most of our edit notes together already, but we want to see how you break your book down and what at this point you think the problems are and the strengths too, versus what we see as some problems to be worked on. And then that way we can kind of approach it kind of as a meeting of minds.
I hear a dog drinking water.
Sorry.
No,
and
it's
she's
okay.
a big dog, so she drinks like slobber.
I'm like, I recognize that sound.
If you guys can see her back there.
Hey.
Sorry about that.
I'm always ready and open to animals on the chat.
We told everybody there would be dogs.
Yeah.
Well, this is like just my makeshift office, because when COVID arrived, my husband has Zoom meetings that are very loud. So I gave him my office so I could shut the doors on him. So this is actually my dining room.
I'm in my sister's spare bedroom, so
there you go.
Dining room right here.
Anne asked a question that I think Lodestar answered pretty well. Is own voices specific only to race, sexual orientation? No, it includes mental health, neurotypical disability, all kinds of stuff, chronic illness. Did I miss anything? I'm sure I missed several things, but anything to add?
Body composition.
Oh, no.
Uh-huh.
Yes, so it's a pretty wide-ranging umbrella. All right. Yay! Laura said the sled in Rosebud is a MacGuffin. I was right. Yeah. I feel like I just passed the test. All right. How important is the voice in the query if the voice in the pages is strong?
I personally like to hear a little bit of a voice in a query because it gives me an idea of what I'm going to see when I read, and what I can expect more of. But I also think that you can overdo it. Like if you throw it out there every sentence, you're probably not getting across what you need to be getting across as far as your plot points and, all your basic information. So, yeah, I would love to see little touches of voice in a query, but, it shouldn't eat up the whole query either.
Yeah. I think the problem arises when the voice in the query is very different from the voice in the book. I've seen queries where the voice in the query was very like kind of lighthearted and comedic, and then the book was like really dark, and obviously that sets a false expectation, right? Tamara asks, I'm sure Tamara's heard me talk about this before, is a query in first POV a turnoff? And I always mention the query letter that I had to read once that was from a serial killer first point of view. That was a turnoff.
Yikes.
Yeah, query letters are the way they are for a reason. I mean, they're a sales tool. They're not the place to show off your character's voice. They're the place to introduce yourself as an author and say, hey, hey, Sarah, hey, Kelley, hey, Janet, hey, Tricia, this is my book. Are you going to be interested in it? As opposed to, of course, I just did that in first person, didn't I? But really, I mean, you're trying to set the stage and you're trying to tell the most important hooky part of your story. And to have that done from a character's perspective makes me kind of wonder what it's going to be like to work with you as an author. Like, is that character-author relationship going to get in the way of what I need to do with you as an author? It's just my take on it.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have today. I think we actually got through all of the questions. We may have missed one or two. If we did, make sure you go to the future video chats and also Twitter chats. And also, some of our mentors are doing Instagram takeovers, and some of them are answering questions then too. So make sure you check that out. Sorry, Tamara, it's okay. I just always like to mention the serial killer one because that was upsetting. Anyway, if our mentors could just kind of tell us, if you want to promote your book, tell us, where we can find you online, that kind of stuff, and we'll close it out. We'll just go around the circle, starting with Kelley.
So you can find me on Twitter at KellyeKell, which is KellyeKell. I think on Facebook it's Kellye Garrett Author, and then on Instagram it's KellyeKell as well. So also I have to go to the bathroom so bad. I'm gonna go. Bye.
Okay. She's probably been chatting on video for like 3 hours. So,
you can find me on Twitter at Gwynne Jackson. You can find me at All the Kissing on Facebook and on the blog, and you can find me on Instagram at gj.writes.
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter at @TLynne. It's LYNNE 67. And then my Instagram is Tricia Lynne Writes. Or all the kissing as well. And then you'll know that if you read one of my blogs, Gwynne copy edited it.
All right.
Okay. I'm really easy. It's Janet Walden-West on Twitter, where I'm at most of the time, on Facebook, on Instagram. So, and that's my website too. So I keep it simple.
Yeah, that's nice. Sometimes I'm like, maybe I should write under a different name so I can have all the usernames I want. My name is too common. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to the mentors for coming and answering everyone's questions. Again, if you are unfamiliar with Pitchwars or you want to learn more about it, you can go to pitchwars.org. I am your host, Sarah Nicolas. This is my YouTube channel, so I hope you will subscribe, and we have all the Pitchwars chats coming up. I also host a show called Pub Talk Live, which is a publishing talk show, and I also host Agent Chat Live, where I chat with different agents about kind of their working style and personality. And Kellye is back just in time to say goodbye to everyone. So thank you all for joining us. Everyone stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask.